The Boston Red Sox want to pay Juan Soto how much? Yes, welcome on into First Pitch for Friday, November 29th. Your source of news, notes, and updates on Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. Follow me on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. He's Troy Brock, Troy B Baseball on the Twitter machine. And today is Black Friday, right? A lot of people are going out and are trying to find bargains and trying to find discounts on items for Christmas. But not every MLB team is working the same way, Troy. We're going to get to the Dodgers having already signed Blake Snell and now looking to add more. We're going to get to Toronto and the incredibly wide net they have cast in trying to find help for the final season of Vlad Guerrero's contract. But first, a report came out, I think it was on Thanksgiving itself, from MLB insider Hector Gomez, saying that the Boston Red Sox not only had made an offer to Juan Soto, but it was 13 years and $625 million, which, if there's not deferrals in here, which reportedly Soto doesn't want deferrals, you're looking at $48 million a year on this deal, which would eclipse the present value of Shohei Ohtani's contract, which is estimated to be worth $46 million a year now. If that is the offer, 13 years, 625, and Hector Gomez has a bunch of Dominican sources. He was all over the Wander Franco stuff. He's the one that reported the Raffy Devers extension before anybody else in Boston media had it. He has sources when it comes to Latin American players. If that is correct, what are the odds that Juan Soto signs the largest contract in both annual value and non-deferred total value in MLB history?
I think they're pretty great if that's correct, because it's only going to go up from there, because the Yankees are going to do whatever they can do to keep Soto from going to Boston. Mm-hmm. And Steve Cohen has already said he's willing to top anybody's offer by $50 million. So if that is actually the case, and if that offer is legit, then it's only going to go up from here, and it's probably going to outpace Shohei Ohtani's total value of his contract of $700 million.
I mean, if 625 is accurate, then you're absolutely in a scenario where, I mean, this is, you could get to $700 million without deferrals rather easily. Now, I think one of the big things there is it would be for longer than Shohei's deal. You know, Juan Soto is 26 years old, so it would go longer, right?
Yeah.
But outside of that, still absolutely wild just to kind of see that that's where this could potentially go. Some of the other reporting said it was an even $50 million a year for 12 years, which is 600 on the dot. Again, I'm going to stick with Hector Gomez. He's been right more often than he is not. 13 years, $625 million. Is this, I think I have to ask at this point, the Boston Red Sox have caught a lot of flack from a lot of fans because they traded away Mookie Betts. They let Xander Bogaerts walk. And then they finally, the guy that they signed, the only one of really the big three that they had to re-sign to long-term deals was Raffy Devers. And there's conversation about, does he need to move to first base because defensively he can't handle third. So there's been a lot of frustration, aggravation, irritation with the Red Sox fan base. Would signing Juan Soto completely wipe all of that away and Boston fans be bought back in that this ownership group is doing what it takes to put up a World Series contending team?
I think so. I don't think, like we've already talked about, I don't think Juan Soto would be the only piece that would put them into World Series contention. I think they'd have to add some other stuff at other places. But I do think that adding Juan Soto would get the fans off their back a little bit. And, you know, I know that at the time when they let Xander Bogaerts walk, that fans were up in arms. But the Boston Red Sox fans need to look at what Xander Bogaerts did since they let him walk. He has not been great, and he doesn't play shortstop anymore.
Yeah, he's moved to second base, and reportedly he could play short, but they've always had better options than him at short.
Right. And so really, just the Mookie Betts thing is probably the only thing that they should be angry about, because like I said, Xander Bogaerts hasn't been great anymore, but Soto would be a great addition to the team. And it was like I told Christian the other day, the thing that Boston has been missing over the past better part of a decade has been a guy like David Ortiz, who is the star on the team and can put up an immense amount of home runs every year and be the focal point of the offense. And they haven't had that in a while. And yes, Rafael Devers is good, and he is one of the better offensive players in baseball, but he's not really a superstar. He really does a lot of his damage under the radar, crazily enough. But Juan Soto would definitely get him a lot closer to that World Series contention.
Yeah, he batted .272 with 28 homers last year, but like he was first on the team in homers. Like multiple players had a better batting average than him. I mean, like multiple. Connor Wong, the catcher, batted .280. Jarren Duran led the team in WAR, batted .285. I mean, it was right behind him in homers with 21. So yeah, it feels like the one that if you could go back and undo any of these three, you undo the Mookie Betts trade, obviously. Although I think there was, correct me if I'm wrong, people on YouTube watching right now, I believe there was some conversation about he didn't want to re-sign with Boston. So obviously that's something you have to overcome with money. You can overcome that with money, let's be honest. But that is definitely an obstacle there. So all right, let's do the thought experiment here. If Juan Soto signs with the Boston Red Sox, their projected lineup per Fangraphs right now has 6 left-handed hitters among their 9 position players, which is kind of wild, right?
Yeah.
The only righties they would have, shortstop Trevor Story. Soto doesn't replace him, right? Catcher Connor Wong, Soto doesn't replace him. And center fielder Ceddanne Rafaela. Soto doesn't play center. You obviously have to make a trade out of your outfield, right? Because you'd have Jarren Duran, you'd have Wilyer Abreu, you'd have Ceddanne Rafaela, Masataka Yoshida, and then Juan Soto. You'd have really 4 guys for 2 corner spots and a DH. Do you think Boston makes a trade to move one of these guys? Do they just send somebody down to the minors? And what's the move here? Is it dumping the contract of Yoshida? Is it, trying to move Wilyer Abreu, who kind of had a breakout in his, in last season? Is it selling Duran at the absolute height of his powers? Like, what is the move here if you sign Juan Soto?
Yeah, they've got a few different options they can go with. I think that probably their best bet would be moving Wilyer Abreu out of that group, just because he still has so much team control left, and he had that breakout season in 2024. And a lot of people were clamoring that he should have been the American League Rookie of the Year winner. And so they would probably get the biggest return from Wilyer Abreu. Other than that, I think they've already talked about moving Masataka Yoshida a little bit here and there. But I think Jarren Duran needs to remain on the team just if they do sign Soto, he'd be the third hitter out of Rafael Devers, Juan Soto, and Jarren Duran. And like we've said a time or two here on this show, every team needs 3 hot hitters in the postseason, and those 3 could definitely be it for the Red Sox.
There you go. Since Yoshida signed for 5 years, $90 million. In his 2 seasons collectively in Boston, he's batted .285, 25 home runs in 248 games, only played in 108 last year because of injury. So it feels like you have a couple options to move guys there, right? You could move, I feel like you could move 3 of them, right? You could move Duran, or you could move Abreu, or you could move Yoshida. Probably depends on who teams are wanting, what profile they're wanting to add, and how much of a believer they are in the breakouts of Duran and Abreu. And I think that's really interesting. But it's definitely it would be an interesting scenario to see the Boston Red Sox sign Juan Soto to a deal that large, especially if there's no opt-outs, because they're not the only team in on Juan Soto. I believe it was John Heyman kind of checking out the report here, said that the offers that have come in for Juan Soto, it's obviously Boston. We know that now. The Mets, the Dodgers, the Blue Jays, and the Yankees, and that the Yankees have reportedly upped their offer. But what I found the most interesting out of that group is the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays are reportedly, like, we've seen them in on some of the absolute biggest free agents. They were in on Shohei Ohtani. Remember that whole thing? We thought that airplane was going with Shohei on it, and it turns out it was not. It was some guy off of like Shark Tank or something. They are reportedly also in. They have interest, according to Sportsnet's Ben Nicholson-Smith, on Alex Bregman, Anthony Santander, Max Fried, Luis Severino. We've talked before about if you don't sign Soto, you can sign like any other 3 guys on the market and stuff like that. But in the final year of team control for Bo Bichette and Vlad Guerrero, do you think it's more important, or you think it's better to add a Juan Soto to give you, these 2 huge bats at the top of the lineup? Or do you think it'd be more useful to add, let's say, either Bregman or Santander, and then either Fried or Severino, right?
In the Blue Jays case, I think that it would be more useful for them to go after the bigger group of players instead of just Juan Soto, because there's already doubts that they're going to be able to or even try to re-sign Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette. And so if they were to go out and sign Juan Soto to for example, 13-year, $625 million contract, then they are on the hook for that contract without having 2 other big players that they're already not expected to re-sign, and they won't assumedly have much interest in making any splashes in free agency going forward with Juan Soto's contract on the books. So Juan Soto would probably be a big help for them in 2025. But as far as the long run goes, they would be better off to go after the multiple players to try and help their 2025 chances of contention.
Yeah, from a baseball perspective, it feels like adding the multiple players. Like, you look at, they have kind of an unstable second base, third base, left field kind of triumvirate. I think right now your projected starters would be like Will Wagner and Ernie Clement at second and third, like Nathan Lukes in left. But you have a bunch of dudes who could compete for some of this stuff. Davis Schneider, Jonathan Clase, like a bunch of names that could potentially all be interchangeable, and being able to slot in a guy like Bregman and then add to your rotation. You have Kevin Gausman, Jose Barrios, Chris Bassett, Bowden Francis, being able to take to that rotation and add Max Fried in there, or Luis Severino would be really interesting. You do lose, if you sign 2 qualifying offer guys, you do lose multiple draft picks, which is a little bit tough. But I wonder if from a non-baseball perspective, right? From a non-on-the-field perspective, if signing Juan Soto wouldn't actually do more for the organization as far as give the fans a reason to believe that, one, they're willing to spend to the point where they could re-sign Vlad, but then also that they can, in fact, attract stars to come to Canada and play for the national team versus always being the runner-up on all of the big free agents, whether it's Shohei, whether it's Judge, whether it's Bryce Harper when he was a free agent, like always being one of the final 3 teams, but never being able to get that star to come up north. Because I can't, and I'm sure somebody will correct me in the comments, I can't remember the last time a marquee free agent chose Toronto over a bunch of other teams, domestic options. And so part of me wonders if, from a marketing standpoint, from a fan base standpoint, if the owners of the Blue Jays might say, hey, maybe it is good if we sign Juan Soto so that we show everybody we are serious about, one, we have the money to spend to try to re-sign Vlad, and that this is a desirable team to join and a desirable destination for MLB players.
Yeah, no. That is a very good point. And real quick, as an aside to that, I forgot Bryce Harper was in the running with the Blue Jays. Can we think about Bryce Harper in blue for a minute? God, that's atrocious. But it's just anyway. Yeah, that's a really good
I don't
point.
remember how serious it was between Harper and the Blue Jays, but I just remember hearing during that free agency that like he had visited with the Blue Jays or something like that.
Yeah.
And so like I'm assuming it got far enough where he actually visited them that like they were legitimately in on him, and it wasn't just checking in with the agent, right?
No, for sure. And yeah, I forgot about that. That's just crazy. But Juan Soto would definitely sell tickets. They would probably sell out 80 to 81 of their home games a year if they had Juan Soto on the payroll. Because again, adding him to Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who was already massively popular in baseball, it would definitely increase their chances of spending in the long run. Yes, but it falls back to that thing we've talked about before, where a lot of these owners don't want to spend,
Right.
and there has to be, like, the owners have to spend. I mean, you and I have talked about it at least twice on this show before, that every owner in baseball is capable of spending the money that the Dodgers and Yankees and Phillies and Mets do spend. It's just not every owner wants to. They look at it more as a business and trying to make a profit instead of trying to win a championship. And that's where the disconnect is between the top spending teams and the not as top spending teams.
Yeah, there was a graphic going around after Blake Snell signed with the Dodgers, and it was about 2023 revenue versus 2024 payroll and the percentage of that revenue that went towards payroll. And it's really kind of funny to go back and look at that and say, like the Dodgers are top 5 in, they had the second highest revenue, second highest payroll. 60% of their revenue was directly paid out in payroll to players. In the NFL, under the CBA in the NFL, 48.8% of team revenues have to be spent on player salaries. Like, it is just, and granted, the economic system's different because it's all national TV deals. There's no local deals and all of that. I acknowledge that. But under their CBA, 48.8% have to go to players, and only 14 MLB teams hit that 48.8% last season. And there are some surprising teams that didn't. The New York Yankees, 46.5%. The Cubs, 46.6%. Only 13 teams spent half of their revenue from 2023 on their payroll in 2024. But number 1 and 2, both, you can probably guess one and not guess the other as far as who's spending the most of their revenue on their payroll. One of them is really easy because it's the New York Mets.
Yeah.
87% of their revenue went directly into payroll because Steve Cohen is not out to make money. He's out to field a winning team. Number 2 on that list, the Toronto Blue Jays. $328 million in revenue, $246 in payroll. 75% of their revenue went into the next season's payroll. And so it's just kind of interesting to think about, like, more teams, like, they're up there with spending the most of their revenue on payroll, and yet they still are trying to sign stars. Whereas you go and you look at the bottom of this list, there's some teams you expect to see. The Pirates are down there. The Athletics are down there. The Rays are down there. But number 28, the Baltimore Orioles, 35.4% of their revenue went into payroll. And I know this is not on the rundown, so apologies for kind of throwing something at you here that's kind of random. I know that there's new owners, but with the way the Baltimore Orioles have not been willing to kind of push in the chips and go all in on this competitive window with all these young players under either pre-arb or arbitration deals, like Adley Rutschman, like Gunnar Henderson, what are the odds that we look back in a decade and we say it's a shame the Orioles didn't do enough to have a legitimate chance to win a World Series during this stretch?
I think they're pretty high, because even right now with the new owners, you're not really hearing that the Orioles are in on guys like Juan Soto, who would put the team over the top and put them in the World. It would be the Orioles and the Dodgers in the 2025 World Series if they signed Juan Soto. And it's just so I think those odds are pretty high, really.
Can you imagine, like, just thinking about all of the young outfielders you have on this team? You're going to lose Cedric Mullins to free agency probably after this upcoming season. But, like, you have Hessen Kjerstad, you have Colton Cowser, you have all of these outfielders, and then you add Juan Soto to that group. I mean, And I think it would go probably more so than any other team a long way in showing that this new ownership group is in fact different, that they intend to spend money and they intend to get serious about actually trying to win a World Series. Because right now, and with the caveat of the new owners could be more aggressive than free agency than we're expecting, maybe they re-sign Corbin Burns or something like that. It doesn't feel like the change in ownership has really done anything to make this team willing to spend. Again, they were third lowest in percentage of revenue turned into payroll the next season in all of baseball. The Tigers were more aggressive at spending when it came to both total payroll and percentage of revenue that they were willing to spend on the major league product than the Orioles were. And I really do think more so than maybe any other team in recent history, I'm going to be incredibly disappointed if Baltimore doesn't do anything besides get knocked out in the first round for a couple seasons and then starts losing some of these guys to free agency when Adley Rutschman and Gunnar Henderson and some of these guys end up being eligible to walk, and they do. I'm going to be disappointed because they had such an amazing farm system, such a ton of young talent, and they tanked so hard to get it. To turn around and not really use it effectively to win a championship is going to be a shame.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, all you heard for years leading up to the last 2 years was, "Oh, the Orioles are coming. The Orioles are coming. That farm system, here they come." And the players are here, and the players for the most part are great. I mean, Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman. If Jackson Holliday can figure out how to hit at the major league level on a consistent basis, that's just another piece. It's insane what they have been able to do with their farm system and just have the majority of those guys hit and be solid additions to the team. But like you said, if they get knocked out in the first round every year, all of it's going to be for naught, because it's crazy, man. It's baseball.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. The last 2 trade deadlines on different podcasts that I've had and things like that, I've kind of read the riot act at the Orioles for not being more aggressive and not doing more at the deadline. And Orioles fans always say there's no reason to blow up the farm to try to chase a World Series this year. We're going to have a decade of a competitive window. And I'm like, I don't think it works like that. I don't think it's as quick as that. You may think that you're going to compete for the next decade. You're already halfway through Adley Rutschman's team control. He's arbitration eligible. Gunnar Henderson's over 2 years of service time already. Again, you just lost Anthony Santander, who hit 40-plus home runs. Corbin Burns is probably walking in free agency. After this year, there's a couple other guys you could lose in free agency, like Cedric Mullins. Your pitching staff is still a little bit. You've got Grayson Rodriguez, Zach Eflin, and behind that, it's Dean Kramer, Albert Suarez, Trevor Rogers. I mean, it's competitive windows aren't open as long as fans always think they're going to be. And you really have to take advantage of the competitive window when it's open. And I don't think the Orioles have done nearly enough work in that regard to this point in the competitive window. And again, the best, like some of the earliest arriving guys, like Adley Rutschman, are already halfway through team. They're just going to get more expensive from here. So, in 3 off seasons, it's not going to be the same situation as Soto, but I think we're going to be talking about Adley Rutschman's free agency and where does he go? Can he find a place that can get him into a championship? Because he's just never won one. Because right now, I don't have any confidence that the Orioles are going to spend until the new owners prove otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. And the American League, the rest of the teams in the American League East have shown that they're willing to spend. Three of the 5 teams are in on Juan Soto, with one of them reportedly making a 13-year, $625 million contract offer to him. So
yeah,
you can't.
Don't forget the Rays checked in. The Rays checked in on Juan Soto. They had an offer to Freddie Freeman. Like the Rays are always in on these things. Yeah, they did. It's just they don't want to do the full length and the full dollar amount. They'll try to get like a year or two. They'll offer him like a high AAV on like a 2-year deal to see if they'll come. And obviously, Freeman wasn't going to do it. Soto wasn't going to do that. But they try. And you know what? Kudos to the Rays for trying. That's all we can ask for, is a team to actually try.
Juan Soto will give you a 20-year deal for $20 million. How would you like to?
There we go. There we go. Talk about a team that's given out some big deals. Obviously, 5 years, 182 to Blake Snell. The Dodgers are reportedly in on Soto. They have made an offer to Juan Soto. if they don't sign Juan Soto, it's obvious. Like, okay, let me back up. As expensive as the Dodgers lineup is, do you think they legitimately want to keep adding? Or is it Juan Soto is so good and so young that they can't pass up the opportunity to maybe add him? So if they don't get Juan Soto, are they going to keep signing free agents? Or for the most part, other than some tinkering on the edges of the roster, are they done for and ready for 2025?
Yeah, if they don't sign Juan Soto, I think that it might be a little bit of tinkering on the edges. They might try to bring back Teoscar Hernandez to slot in the outfield, but really, what more can you do for their roster? It's crazy what they've already done, and their rotation. I mean, it's still held together with duct tape and staples, but it's when they're healthy, it's one of the best rotations in baseball, if not the best rotation in baseball. And so, but if they add Juan Soto to this team, man, that's we can just sit back and talk about the Dodgers winning the World Series for the next 10 years or so.
How many MLB fans are going to like quit watching in protest, or say they're going to quit watching in protest if Juan Soto joins the Dodgers?
I already know of one that has already quit watching in protest just for the Blake Snell signing. So if they get Juan Soto too, it's going to be coming in droves.
Can you imagine a starting four of Shohei Ohtani? I'm assuming the way they'd structure this is Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, Juan Soto, Freddie Freeman batting 1 through 4 in the same lineup. It's practically an all-star game right at that point.
Yeah. That's nasty. I'm gonna have nightmares tonight just thinking about that.
Yeah, I do think that if they don't, if they end up not getting Juan Soto, I don't think the Dodgers are done. I do think there's some moves they can make. I like your idea of bringing back Teoscar. As of right now, your outfielders would be Tommy Edman and Cinder. You'd have Andy Pages in left and James Outman in right. Outman batted like 147 last year. And I could see them preferring him as a fourth outfielder versus a third, getting Teoscar back. I could see them, if they can, maybe trying to make a move. You have the flexibility of Mookie Betts as well. Maybe they can't get Teoscar, but they can get Willy Adames and put him at short and be able to move Mookie to either second or back to the outfield, let him play right field, leave Gavin Lux at second. Like, there's a couple options here I could see them doing. I don't think third base is a position they go for. Max Muncy really can't play anywhere else. And so if you try to put somebody at third, I guess you bump Muncy to second, which means Lux is on the bench. Like there's not a lot of work you can do, but I feel like you can add one impactful player between shortstop and left field with the understanding that Mookie Betts is the flexible piece that lets you do that. I do think them doing one more addition like that would make sense. Their payroll is projected right now to be at $311 million for next year. It was $326 at the end of last year. So it's still lower than what they had last year, even when you factor in having Blake Snell as an addition to this team, because Teoscar's contract is off the books and things like that. So I do think there's another piece if they don't get Juan Soto. If they do get Juan Soto, boy, it's going to be rough on the streets for a while, man. You're going to see a lot more conversations about what does the next CBA negotiation look like and what are some of the options we have to try and figure out competitive balance a little bit better. And I do think maybe in the offseason we can talk about this a little bit more. I do have an idea about stealing some stuff from the NBA about how you can go over the tax or the CBT on to retain your own players, and they don't count the same in the tax as they would an outside free agent and things like that. I do think there's things the league could do to try to give other teams to help incentivize spending from other teams, but ultimately it all comes down to a cap and a floor. If the MLB doesn't have a salary floor, which I do think as they trend towards getting more national TV deals, in the league having the streaming rights for most teams and all of that, I do think it gets easier to implement a spending floor simply because the baseline of revenue for everybody is higher. But if Juan Soto goes to the Dodgers, boy, it's going to be tough for everybody else to really kind of take in, hey, what does our team do now? Knowing that at some point in time, if you're in the NL, at some point in time, you're going to have to go face them in the postseason.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to be bad for the sport in the short run unless it spurs massive change in the next CBA negotiation.
Yeah, absolutely. And it get the payroll thing got me thinking about, again, the talk about the owners that aren't willing to spend money. And I looked up the Guggenheim group because I mean, I know Magic Johnson was a part of it, as well as some other former athletes and whatnot. But the controlling partner is Mark Walter, and he's the CEO of a privately held global financial services firm. So maybe the answer to getting owners to spend money is having guys like Mark Walter and Steve Cohen as owners who aren't wanting to make a profit from their baseball team. They want to win because they have all these investment assets that they're making they're living off of.
They're independently rich outside of baseball, whereas it feels like a lot of the current owners of the teams are either wealthy because they own a baseball team and most of their net worth is tied up in the fact they own the team, they got it from their parents or something, or they're like John Fisher with the A's, who just refuses to spend their money on the team because they're trying to move and they're trying to take the team and all of that. Yeah, it does feel like this is probably the only time I'll ever say that I'm okay with a billionaire even existing, never mind owning a sports team. I honestly think they should all get eaten, but it is nice to see, like, if I was a Mets fan, I would feel good about the competitiveness of my team in the future, knowing that Steve Cohen isn't trying to make money off of the team. He doesn't need the team to be revenue positive so that he can keep his house, right? His goal is just, I want to win a championship.
Yeah.
And I wish more teams operated that way. But you look at Bob Nutting, you look at Dick Monfort, all these teams that, like, the owners have money and can spend, but every bit they spend cuts into their main source of profits for them and their families and their lifestyle. And so because of that, they're just not willing. And that is ultimately the biggest problem with baseball, but that's not one you can fix in a CBA negotiation unless you make them spend through having a floor. And to do that, the Players Association is going to have to accept a cap. And that feels like something they're very proud of, the fact that baseball does not have a salary cap. So maybe they can do something kind of like the NBA with the second apron, where like nobody will cross the second apron, something like that. Maybe they can do something like that in the future. But as of right now, there are financial issues that are deeper than just one team getting all of the assets. And it's because the other teams aren't willing to compete with them on getting those assets. And that's the frustrating point.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's just, it might not get fixed at this next CBA. It might be the one after, or it might be decades down the line. You and I might be long gone before any of this happens. But if there is one thing to take away from today's show, it is rivalry week in college football, and roll tide, Lindsay. I wore this just for you.
I can't believe you did that. War Eagle, baby. It's War Eagle forever. This has been First Pitch for Friday, November 29th. We'll be back on Monday. You can see us talk about who won the Iron Bowl between Auburn and Alabama next week. In the meantime, you're listening on audio. Do us a favor, leave us a 5-star review. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when we drop a new episode. Also, leave a 5-star review because we love words of affirmation over here. Until next time, this has been First Pitch.